selalunya memang macam tu, instead of kamu tanam pelbagai campur, yang tu selalunya akan less effect from the pest. Okay, here pun sama, like I said, the use of genetically uniform cultivar, which is monoculture tadi, high use of fertilizer and other chemicals, and also because of irrigation practice has produced many pest problem which is not present in early day. Okay, when we are talking about pests, it's also include, let's say, okay, katalah you translate pest ni termasuk juga weeds. Okay, sebabnya sama ada, dia juga benda yang kita tak nak, right? Cumanya in form of pokok. So weed also include in pest problem. And but in general term, usually when we are talking about pest, selalunya it is involve animal. Tapi in the large context of IPM, Integrated Pest Management, dia termasuk juga dengan weed management. Okay. And to control pest problem, early practice previously they aim at to minimize the damage. But after the World War II, okay, there are introduction of synthesized insecticide, maksudnya man-made insecticide. And then what to do, instead of minimize the damage, the attempt is to eradicate all the pest problem. But of course, bila as you know, bila kita bercakap pasal synthesis insecticide, okay, there are issues of environment, issues of human health. So because of that, late 1969 and early 1970s, okay, because of this concern, they come up with integrated pest management. Maksudnya instead of totally eradicate, totally use only on a chemical, so they come up with integrated, which is combination of all management practice, bukan hanya chemical. So the concept is to make sure that environment tak rosak, okay, your health, human has no problem with that, and then juga there is no problem about resistance, okay, because when we are using a lot of synthesized insecticides, okay, this pest is actually start having resistance to the pesticide. So once you use, once they are resistant, so maksudnya kamu gunalah banyak-banyak insecticide pun, which is mungkin akan menyebabkan environmental degradation but not affected to the insect. So that's how the IPM come out. And then based on the FAO, okay, it's defined IPM as a careful consideration. Maksudnya you have to be careful when you want to consider how to manage the pest. Of all available pest control technique, like I said, mana yang available, mana yang terbaik, and subsequent integration of appropriate measure that discourage the development of pest population and keep pesticide and other intervention to level that are economically justified and reduce or minimize risk to human health and environment. Okay, or the IPM also is actually a practice that regulate pest population to prevent the pest outbreak instead of attempt to eliminate all, okay, through the use of many control strategies as possible without injury to human and environment. So it's just the meaning is the same, okay, atas ke bawah ni sama, cumanya it depend on the wording lah, macam mana dia tulis ayat tu. Yang pasti you have to remember IPM is combination of all methods, integration of all method to discourage the development, maksudnya to reduce the development of pests, tak nak bagi dia outbreak. And then at the same time, we don't want the, I mean, we want to minimize the effect on the human and environment. Okay, so tu adalah the main point for IPM. Okay, the aims is to suppress pest population below the economic injury level. Okay, previously we already seen dalam lectures which is economic threshold level. Okay, So you can imagine that economic threshold level adalah level yang bawah. So maksudnya katalah kalau kamu tak control during ETL, it will reach ETL. It will reach EIL, economic injury level, where the cost for management of pest adalah sama dengan hasil. So you imagine kalau hasil yang kamu dapat bila kamu tanam tanam sayuran ke apa-apa adalah sama dengan cost bila kamu manage the pest. Okay, so maksudnya dia tak balik hasil pun lah. Orang kata dalam bahasa Melayu ni dia tak ada dapat hasil apa-apa. Sebab hasil yang kamu dapat tadi sebenarnya adalah sama banyak dengan cost. Okay, so we want to avoid that. So IPM ni adalah so that sebelum they reach EIL level, we already can control or suppress the pest population. Otherwise, kamu tanam sayur pun tak ada guna, right? Sebab hasil tak dapat. Okay. So that's the aim. Yang ni pun samalah dia punya explanation. Okay, so to accomplish this IPM, integrated pest management, so to come up with the good measure, you have to have a knowledge about the pest life cycle, number of generation per year, population density, growth potential, density dependence and independent factors, and also about the crop production, including economy. So that's why our plant protection subject ataupun plant protection course ni sebenarnya to introduce you all with the pests, sama ada pests in term of weed, in term of insects, maybe in term of pathogen kan. So about their life cycle, generation, population density, so that you can understand and then come up with the best measure how to control this kind of pests lah. Okay, when we are talking about the use of single management technique, usually people atau farmers prefer using chemical kan. Sebabnya bila kamu spray chemical, automatically you see okay, insect or pest tu mati, and then dia produce what we call it hasil yang memang nampak dengan cepat lah. But actually by using this single management technique, which is chemical tadi, it come out with pest resistance. Okay, here resistance, you may heard about pest resistance or plant resistance. Okay, so kalau plant resistance maksudnya plant resistant to pest or to pathogen. But when we are talking about pest resistance, so it refers that pest tu adalah resistant terhadap terhadap plant if the plant can come up with the maksudnya biocontrol and so on, and also it's resistance to insecticide yang you produce. So there ada dua konsep kat sini when we are talking about resistance. Either pest tu yang resistant atau plant tu yang resistant to pest. But in IPM, the main concerns adalah bila kita bercakap pasal penggunaan chemical, we are the most concerned adalah about pest resistance to insecticide or to chemical. Sebabnya kalau dia resistant to chemical, you use a lot of chemical pun tak guna. It's just environmental will degrade tapi pest tak dapat di control. So usually the more efficient the technique, the higher the selection of pressure for resistance. Maksudnya kalau let's say kamu ada dua jenis chemical. Okay, first chemical when you spray maybe only 10 die. Okay, and then another chemical when you spray maybe thousands of insect die. Okay, so maksudnya yang 1000 tu is the best technique lah kan, the more efficient in term of this concept. But you see when the pest, okay, bila dia having more pressure, sebabnya dah 1000 dah mati ni kan. Okay, so the higher the pressure, the more resistance toward the technique akan appear. Maksudnya here I think you all have heard about survival of the fittest. Okay, term tu kan. Maknanya siapa yang lagi fit, yang baik berjaya mampu menahan pressure from the environment, so maksudnya dia akan survive. Okay, so samalah juga dalam isu ataupun dalam konsep resistance. Okay, when you put higher pressure, okay, so this pest dia akan trying to survive. So due to that, dia akan produce mungkin progeny later, the later progeny that akan tahan terhadap chemical you use. So in concept of IPM, the first one yang control 10 with the second one yang control 1000, okay, yang control 10 tu adalah you can say it's the best choice. Okay, dia mungkin tak more efficient in controlling, but the best choice because bila dia hanya mampu it still can kill the insect. It's just that dia tak boleh 100% eradicate. Dia just mungkin control the pest population or reduce at the what we call it acceptable level. Okay, so because of that, pest tu pun macam akan it won't come out or it won't produce progeny yang which is resistant to pesticide by using only pesticide A tadi yang hanya mungkin boleh membunuh 10. Okay, you understand about this concept? Faham ke tak? Anyone? Tak ada orang dah. Ni ada orang kata ni. I'm not sure whether you heard about my... Okay. So saya macam dah confused. Okay, semua orang senyap. Is it? Okay, but do you understand about this? Maksudnya lagi if you put a lot more pressure, it will come up with more resistance pest. Okay, but if you are talking about plant resistant, which is good lah kan, maksudnya kalau plant tu berjaya resistant terhadap serangan pest, then baguslah untuk tumbuhan kamu. Okay, but now we are talking about pest resistant, which is pest tu resistant terhadap pesticide. So lagi bagus pesticide yang kamu guna, maksudnya lagi tinggi pressure dekat pest tu so that it will come out with the progeny yang resistant to pesticide later on. Okay, so kita tak nak lah macam tu sebab later on kalau kamu kalau ada population yang resistant to pesticide, then you have a problem to control the population lah. Okay, so therefore combination of technique in the management program is the best solution. So instead of just use one, which is chemical control, you use a lot of control, which is like cultural control, okay, where you change the environment, and also mechanical control. Mechanical, it can be hand-picked, it can be using traps. So usually we usually combine mechanical with a cultural control. And then we have biological control where involve predator, parasitoid, the one that can control the population of pests. And then lastly, barulah come up with chemical control. Okay, so chemical control is actually the last choice ataupun the last how to say technique that you have to use to control the pest management, to control the pest population in IPM, integrated pest management. So for culture control, it's involved manipulation of environment to make it less favorable to pest population, meaning you didn't directly kill the pest. It's just that you change environment dekat mungkin your punya kebun so that pest tu tak akan datang dekat your kebun. So that's how the cultural work. But in cultural juga, like I said previously, we combine together with mechanical tadi. Okay, so this technique is very ancient. Maksudnya memang dari dulu orang pakai, and it's also varied with culture, crop and pest involved. So it depend on the crop. Sama ada, okay, katalah bila you tanam banana, okay, so for cultural control, mungkin kamu nak remove stump infested by the borer, for example. But when you planted mango, okay, so for cultural control, mungkin you have to bagging the fruit so that fruit fly tak pergi serang your mango lah. So the technique for cultural control is depend on the crop as well as pest involved. Sebab tu saya kata kamu kena faham, okay, which pest yang attack certain plant and then part mana yang dia attack. So you have to understand that. And normally the result of course not immediate. Maksudnya kamu tak boleh terus dapat result compare to you use insecticide where you spray terus nampak mati, right? So for culture control you won't get the result immediately. And usually it's applied in long time before the economic damage is evidence. Maksudnya before you start planting, okay, maksudnya sebelum kamu start penanaman pun, usually people start with cultural control, okay, first. So cultural control ni you can apply it throughout your stages of planting. Maksudnya dari sebelum tanam, prepare the plot area sampai harvest. Okay, so there is no time, limited time ataupun specific time for cultural control. Usually we start before the any progress happen lah dekat our crops, okay. And for example, we can do a crop rotation. This is an example. Crop rotation maksudnya kamu alternate with different families of crop for certain season, okay. And then you can do timing of planting, plowing and harvesting correctly. Kan macam for example like yang previously we have brown plant hopper, green plant hopper. How to control using cultural control, you can do simultaneous planting. Maksudnya kamu tanam serentak instead of tanam berperingkat because this pest can move around kalau kamu tanam berperingkat kan. Okay, so we usually suggest to do simultaneous planting for this hopper, okay, but not for other pests. Maksudnya kamu tak boleh tanam simultaneous planting mungkin to other crop as well. Okay, so it depends. And then proper sanitation, usually removal of infested crop residue and alternate hosts. Okay, and then you can also breeding crop that pest resistance. Okay, sekarang crop tu or plant tu yang resistance to pest, which is good for you. So kalau kita ada lagi banyak crops yang lagi resistance terhadap pest, then you can expect the good income or the good result or the good production lah. And sama juga tadi yang saya kata, we combine the mechanical control like traps, hand picking and etc. Okay, this is the picture. Okay, this hand picking, this one you use net, and this is bagging, and then this one we do mulching using plastic bag and also straw, and this is the pheromone trap to control the rhinoceros beetle. Okay, then we have biological control. Okay, biological control meaning that you manipulate either pests or either the predator or parasitoid of the pest. So first you can mass sterilizing the male. Here is maksudnya you manipulate the pest. Okay, so you produce the male which is sterile in lab. Okay, produce banyak-banyak pest yang male dia adalah sterile, and then you expose ataupun you left ataupun lepaskan dia kepada environment so that this sterile male dia akan breed with female yang ada dekat outside. Okay, now we are talking about pest. So bila dia mate with female, you imagine now the male is sterile, so even dia mate banyak kali pun it won't produce a next generation. So that's how the biological work. And then you can also use pheromone and growth regulator. Usually pheromone and growth regulator ni sama ada kita letak dekat mungkin involve some part of chemical by using baits or maybe juga involve mechanical tadi. We put pheromone in traps. Okay, so but pheromones and growth regulator usually come from manipulation ataupun kita produce based on the pheromone that produced by the pest itself. Okay, and then you can use also bacteria. BT is Bacillus thuringiensis. Okay, now we already produce what we call it. It's also can be put under chemical because it's produced not synthetically, tapi maksud saya we produce BT in lab and then use it as a pesticide. So it's in form of chemical, cumanya sekarang dia bukan chemical, it's actually BT tu, Bacillus thuringiensis. Tapi kalau application dia sama application macam chemical, maksudnya kamu spray dia seolah-olah macam racun. Cumanya sekarang racun tu is not a form of chemical, dia adalah in a form of BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, living thing. Okay, and then we can also use naturally existing predator and parasite. Okay, this is available in environment. There are advantage and disadvantage using biocontrol. Okay, for advantage, of course, usually the agent or biocontrol ni adalah very selective. Maksudnya if you mass rat and then lepas ke environment, it won't cause effect to other organism sebab dia memang selektif, dia akan serang dia punya target pest sahaja. And then of course insect resistance also less evidence sebabnya pest tadi tu takkan resistant terhadap dia punya predator. It won't act like a chemical, okay? Sebab predator or parasitoid ini adalah what we call it appear naturally in environment. So usually pests they won't come out with resistance toward their enemy, okay? Or towards their parasitoid lah. So selalunya the resistance is less evidence and then ecosystem also less affected because I said it's appear or it's the biocontrol agent dia adalah natural. Okay, even though you maybe mass rat dia. Okay, and then it's also less dangerous to human, which is sama juga tadi, selective. So usually parasite ni takkan influence atau dangerous to our human health. Okay, this is the picture. Okay, this one we have Taito alba ataupun kita panggil banau untuk control rat in oil palm plantation. And then we have parasitoid yang lay eggs inside the larvae of the pest. And then here bawah ni we have assassin bug. Okay, yang feed on other pests, and then we have also this one is Acylidae robber fly, also feed on other insects. And here gambar ke atas ni, okay, this is actually what we call it beneficial plant. Okay, beneficial plant, it won't control the pest directly. Okay, selalunya kalau kamu lalu dekat ladang kelapa sawit ke tepi-tepi felda ke kan, so they planted with this type of plant like Tunera, okay, Antigonan, and then we have Cassia here. So dia tanam ni sebenarnya this plant attract pollinator, predator and parasitoid. Okay, so they attract beneficial insect to come to the area. Okay, dan secara tak langsung once the beneficial insect tadi banyak dekat kawasan yang di-attract tadi tu, secara tak langsung dia boleh control the population of pests. Okay. But biological control also have their own disadvantage, which is it's difficult to achieve the effectiveness. Maksudnya kamu tak tahu sama ada bila kamu you use biocontrol, either it's effective or not. And then juga dia punya timing, katalah tadi spraying of pathogen, you want to use BT. It's often critical because as you see the living BT is Bacillus thuringiensis for example, right? So they'll they're also a living things, and as you know, living things also influenced by environment. Okay, so katalah mungkin if you spray during very hot weather, so dia tiba-tiba terus kering, dry, and then mungkin tak efektif lah. So you have to know your timing bila masa nak guna that kind of pathogen. And then also difficult to meet government regulation. Okay, when you talking about pathogens, there are always issues sama ada dia akan influence human health ke tak. So any product that produced by using the type of what we call it living things, pathogen ni as you know is living thing kan, sama ada bacteria, fungi or anything. Okay, so it has to meet the strict government regulation. Otherwise kalau tak lepas then you cannot produce it. Okay, so usually it's difficult lah to meet this government regulation unless you can say for sure that it's very safe. Okay, and then predator and parasite often susceptible to insecticide than pests. Okay, when you use insecticide spray, for example, to control pests, okay, selalunya group of insects yang either predator or parasite ni dia lagi susceptible, maksudnya dia lagi terkesan dengan insecticide that you use. So usually when you are combine biological and chemical control, so there is a possibility that your biological control tadi doesn't work because sekarang your biological tadi dah reduce due to the use of insecticide. And then also mass rearing and maintaining is very difficult. So you imagine you want to mass rear for example the predator in the lab. Okay, bila kamu nak mass rear, you have to have food. Kan, maksudnya predator ni of course dia nak kena makan, and then you have to produce the pest as well because pest tu adalah food for the predator. So usually mass rearing and maintaining is very difficult. Okay, but some of the predator it can be done lah in the lab. And then okay, introduction of polyphagous parasite could affect both native and pest species indiscriminately. When we are talking about polyphagous, maksudnya dia makan pelbagai ataupun dia effect pelbagai jenis serangga. So sama ada yang native, usually yang native maksudnya dia appear naturally, which is you don't have to control, like macam it may be a pollinator, it may be a predator or parasitoid in that area. But when we introduce the parasite which is polyphagous, so it can kill either a good or beneficial insect, and also it can kill the pest indiscriminately lah. Okay, now the third control is chemical control, where you use pesticide to kill target organism. Okay, this is the last choice lah saya kata. Okay, tadi when we are talking about IPM. Okay, so there are a few type of pesticide. It depend on the target pest that you want. So when we are talking about insecticide, the name insect of course it refers dia punya target adalah insect. Now we have herbicide, the target is weed atau herbs. Okay, and we have nematocide, which is target dia only on nematode. Fungicide on fungus, acaricide on mite, and we have rodenticide on rodent. Okay, so when we are talking about pesticide, it's actually too general. Okay, so semua chemical untuk control pest itu adalah pesticide. But we have different type of pest, and then of course we have different type of pesticide. Yeah? Okay, of course it's very effective kan. Like I said, kamu spray terus nampak dia pest induction, which is your pest is die. Okay, but the long term, it will cause many problems. First tadi pest resistance, and then resurgence of the pest, secondary pest outbreak. Okay, secondary pest outbreak meaning that katalah in your area you have two type of pests, pest A and pest B. Pest A is the main pest. Okay, and then you buy insecticide to control the main pest. You spray the insecticide. Your main pest, which is A tadi, okay, dah remove from your area. But you have another pest, which is, we call it secondary pesticide. Secondary pest, which is at the beginning due